show is brought to you by the letter V for visitors and victory. Natalie, hi.
Hi.
We are talking today about a mini-series that was very popular in the 80s. I was obsessed with it, and I was a child. And it, to this day, has a cult following. Like, when people go to, like, the Comic-Cons and stuff like that, they dress up as these characters to this day.
I could see that.
Even though a lot of people haven't heard of it.
I'd never, ever in my life
Okay.
heard of this.
I think if
Until
you didn't
said
watch
we have
it,
to watch it. Yeah.
if you didn't watch it, you never heard of it. But if you
Yeah.
watched it, it was cheesy, but it was good.
That makes sense for a lot of mini-series because I don't know almost anybody on the planet ever knew what North and South was, and Michelle and I talked about it religiously.
You sure did.
And so
I only knew about it
same.
because of you and
because
your
of
sister.
us. Exactly. So yeah, I had no idea what you were talking about. You're like, it's called V. I'm like V, like the letter V? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And
It
we've
is-
actually been talking about this, I think, for a couple of years that
A
you
while.
wanted me to watch it. And I was like,
Because we keep seeing people
yeah,
on shows that are on this show.
Yeah.
So every time I'd be like, oh my gosh, that guy was on V.
Yeah.
As the shortest title of a series ever,
mm-hmm.
because it's just V.
V. Yeah.
And it was a science fiction miniseries that aired on NBC in 1983. It was written and produced by Kenneth Johnson, who had previously written for series such as The $6 Million Man and The Incredible Hulk, and he created the Bionic Woman character and went on to write for that show. And I asked you to watch this because I saw it on Amazon, and oh my gosh, 1983, I was in the 3rd grade. So I definitely watched this entire series in the 3rd grade and was obsessed with it. And then I watched it again in the 90s. I was on vacation in Colorado, and we were staying like in a condo, and it was on TV. And so me and my brother sat there and watched it like all day. Like they had a marathon or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I watched it again a few years later because somebody I knew had a VHS copy from Japan that had subtitles in Japanese. So I had seen the series 3 times, and now I've seen it a 4th time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was obsessed with it. And it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. As a kid, it would be scary.
Terrifying. And on that little screen,
oh yeah,
the special effects don't look so bad.
Yeah.
But I really thought you'd hate it. I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to hate this. It's going to freak her out.
Nope. I legit was like, well, okay, what am I getting myself into? You may have mentioned the premise, possibly. I think you kind of told me, but I was like, I don't think I remembered. And I just bought it on Amazon. I started watching it one morning. And in the beginning, I was confused because they're like videotaping a scene or something, like a war scene.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I'm confused. And then I was like, this is really good. This is really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the very first, so there's 5 episodes that are all like an hour and a half or whatever as the miniseries. And I watched that first one, on one day. And I was like, oh my God, that's really good. Like, it's really good. And then the next time I ended up binging 3 more of the episodes on the same day. And then I finally watched the end of it, not until last night, actually. So I always can tell something by, again, a lot of times the lack of me writing down notes, because usually I start writing notes down when I am trying to think of things, but I was so into this that I didn't write down notes sometimes. So I was like, oh my
I feel like
gosh.
if you're into it, and if it's short, and if you're into it, then
Yeah.
you're going to remember everything.
You don't need it. Yeah.
And
That's kind of
what do you need to
exactly.
write down anyway?
Yeah.
I went down a whole rabbit hole when I was researching it because I watched it like 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
It's been a while now since I watched it last. And so then I was just doing research this week. Kenneth Johnson got the idea for the script from a 1935 dystopian novel by Sinclair Lewis called It Can't Happen Here.
Okay.
And in the book, a new US president is elected by spreading fear and promising economic reform and a return to traditional values. And then after elected, he imposes totalitarian rule, which of course is not a good thing. And it is an essential reading for these trying times. In fact, I was in a hippy dippy coffee shop the other day, and they had a quote from this book on the wall about totalitarian governments. And I'm not going to repeat it, but anyway, I thought, wow, this is like really timely and really important right now. So it was based on that. He wanted to do a series based on that, but he couldn't quite find the angle. Like he had a script and then like the networks were like, no, it's boring. Like it's too in your face. It's too direct.
Yeah.
And they were like, you need to find something to make it more entertaining and less doomsday.
Mm-hmm.
He finally concluded that space aliens would be the best vehicle for this message. And then he completed the script for the miniseries very quickly. And we ended up with space aliens taking over with a message that is pretty clear in the series what the message is.
Yeah, I as I'm going along, right, just watching it right away. So then you watch them and they kind of the suits that these guys have are very like Star Trek like, so
The
of
red
course like the
suits,
red
yeah.
suits. Um and I guess to me watching this from perspective in 2024, the ships that come over are very a la Independence Day.
Yeah, they just
And
kind of show up and hover there.
yeah, they were just giant ships that look exactly the same like that in the if you've seen the movie. So they're hovered over and everybody's wondering what is going on? What's going on? And then if I remember correctly, they like a smaller ship comes down to Earth and the people come out and they're like they look just like
They're
us.
very unassuming.
Yeah, and a lot of them sometimes have like the big giant sunglass kind of things. And they talk with what sounds like a back echo to their voices. It kind of revibrates back or whatever. And they're basically like, we're here to help you, and we're from a different planet, and everything's going to be great, and we want to work together.
Yeah, they're like, we need your water or whatever. And in
Yeah.
exchange, we're going to like give you all kinds of technological secrets and whatever. And we're
Yeah.
all going to live together in perfect harmony.
It's going to be great.
Great.
And yeah, pretty soon. And ironically enough, right when I'm watching at the very beginning, they have a little symbol on the chest of their little outfits that does kind of odd enough look like a swastika. So it's very,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of,
Interesting.
a lot of Nazi parallels.
Yeah.
And
They're most definitely. And then there's a whole family that kind of realizes that because there were survivors of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And
but they're not the ones who are hiding this time.
No.
They're hiding a family.
They're hiding another family.
Because
So,
the aliens, they start rounding up the scientists because the scientists can figure out who's an alien and like what they're here for. And they don't trust the aliens. So it becomes like
they turn the humans against the
Yes.
scientists by telling them, hey, and I think early on they planted evidence or something, or they kind of made it like, oh, here's what they're doing, and made them seem like they were bad people.
like
So
they're
now
gonna ruin it for all of you because they're against us and
Yeah.
we're trying to help you and they're ridiculous.
and they basically convince people, and they even get kids to be helpers.
Yup.
Just like young what's his bucket,
Daniel.
yeah, and he gets his little uniform and he plays it up like, oh, I'm this guy now. And it was very Rolf from Sound of Music to me. I was like,
my
oh dear
goodness, you're right.
goodness. I was like,
You're
that's
right.
a parallel if I've ever seen
You're right.
one.
So this group of scientists have a plan and they're gonna I don't know what they're going to do. But they steal some equipment from a place called Stamos Pharmaceuticals. You see that?
It was called Stamos. For sure.
A lot of the effects are pretty cheesy. For the time, it was fine.
Yeah.
We were watching it on like, a little TV.
Yeah.
Um, Julie's brainwashing sequence. Do you remember when they brainwashed Julie?
Yes.
That was so intense.
Yeah.
And
Actually, it went on so long.
it went on
I
so
really
long.
couldn't watch it. I was like, this is starting to make me, well, one, my eyes were like,
Yeah.
because it's a shaky screen and all that, just
Yeah.
like trying to prove the point that they could brainwash her. I was like, all right, can we get past this? Because this is,
Right.
it
It was too long.
it
And the
was very long.
actress was like enduring this whole thing, and there was a lot of flashing lights. And I was like, this is really intense, but also I don't like it. It's making me feel a certain way, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But then a giant lizard showed up. So
Yeah.
that kind of broke the spell. But
Right.
yeah, that was weird. And this really scared me. The whole show scared me as a kid. I mean, I loved it. But parts of it scared me because when you're young, you don't know what could be real and what's like made up for TV.
Yeah.
And the two scariest scenes when I was a kid were when Diana eats the hamster, which of course now on my big screen looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it's like obviously like a rubber mask.
Yeah. And their whole
And they're
face
like,
like
oh,
opens
my whole
up.
face opened
Yeah.
up. So she eats a hamster. That freaked me out. And and when they take their eyeballs out and switch them with like their lizard eyes.
Yes.
Which I don't know why that's necessary.
No.
Or like how that even works, because whatever. But then when the babies were born,
dude,
I will never forget when those babies were born. And like the one baby was just like, I'm a regular baby. And then the next baby just crawled out of there like lizard baby.
Yeah. Well, it was so bizarre anyway. I mean, yeah, in the beginning when Mike gets on the ship and he's like spying on them ahead of time, and that's when they were eating the animals because they would never eat on Earth.
Right.
Oh, can you come in for dinner? Oh, I'm fine.
Mhm.
And they're like, hey, we never watch them eat. Well, it turns out they eat live animals. So they're up there on their main ship, and that's what they're doing. And then he ends up fighting with one. That's the guy I think that takes his eyeballs out.
Yes.
And when they're fighting, Mike scratches his face and reveals the lizard skin underneath.
See, this is where I thought we would have lost you.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, now this can be done. When they start peeling off skin, she's done.
I was literally like, okay, this is bizarre. I mean, there's a couple of things I didn't want to look at. I was like, oh, okay, I don't want to watch that, guys, and what he's going to look like. But that was the weirdest, like, that was so weird to me. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So yeah, these are definitely bad guys and whatever.
Because then he also found that they were keeping people in pods.
Yeah.
Because that was what they were really here
God.
for.
When he found that out, there's
Another
scene is disgusting, actually. That scene was so gross. First of all, they're on this ship that's, beyond gigantic.
It's the mothership.
It's the mothership. And because he had some key that he stole and it gets into like certain spots on that ship. And then every time he somehow gets onto this ship multiple times without being detected, he opens up like, it turns on like a light. And one, it looks like you'd fall into an abyss when you see this part. And there's just lines and lines and lines of like frozen humans.
I should not have been watching this in the 3rd grade.
No, you're just reminding me of all the weird things we watched when we were kids, and they should have never let us watch like scary movies that I watched. Probably why I won't watch scary movies anymore. Yeah, that was gross, and I just couldn't even. And then
humans in pods, basically.
Yeah. And then my favorite part about this,
eat 'em.
Mike has his video camera up there, and he actually videotaped a little bit of stuff. And then when he gets back, they already know this is going to happen. So they have now put out a broadcast that he's an armed and dangerous person, and he's got a fake video, and all this stuff's going to happen. And it's literally like, I mean, there's posters all over the country of the visitors saying, these are our friends. And they look all cheerful. And there was a scene that they said they were faking disasters and having the visitors like save people from a fire so that they're our friends and they love us. And I'm like, oh my God.
And they were replacing people, like actual people with clones or like with lizards dressed up as them, like political figures. Cause there was like one politician on the news who was like shaking hands weird or something, and this guy was like, "That's not really him."
Yes.
And or he was writing with his other hand or
Yeah,
something.
did you see when they got, Jordan Lee from Dallas? He's the guy maybe he's the one you're talking about. He was like
Yeah.
he was questioning, and then he gets kidnapped, and he was in the chamber where they brainwashed Julie,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden he comes down and he's like, "These guys are great,"
They're
and da
our
da 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 da,
friends.
and everyone
Yeah.
was like, "What?"
Everyone's like, "Wait a minute, that's not even him."
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
And that was where it was. So at one point when they're like, so now they're trying to, some of them are trying to help their friends who are scientists and to hide. And one of them, the one guy was going to turn in the family next door who was going to hide in their house. And then Abraham, he's like the grandpa guy, he tells his son, he's like, he goes, well, we can't hide them. They're, they're trying to ruin it for us.
Mhm.
And Abraham tells his story about how he had to watch this guy, his son, his adult son's mother walk into the showers where there was no water. He's describing the Holocaust.
Mhm.
And this guy had never heard this story from his dad before.
Mhm.
So basically, he's like, no, we have to help them. We don't, that's not necessarily true. These are our friends, these are our neighbors. And that was like super emotional. I was like, oh my gosh. And that was
That's
like
kind of
towards,
where you start to realize, "Oh, that's what's going on here."
yeah, yeah,
Because before you're like, "Oh, aliens," and,
yeah,
like, whatever, and then you go, "Oh, I didn't realize what was happening."
right. I
So
didn't
the
realize they're trying to gaslight everybody. Yeah.
Right. So the Maxwell family are the ones who are being hidden,
Mm-hmm.
and Daniel, his family is the one hiding them. But Daniel has a crush on Robin
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
and he's the one who has joined this alien army or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he confronts Robin because he wants to go out with her and whatever, and she turns him down, and so he frickin' turns in her family
Mm-hmm.
to the aliens. And he's like, "Well,
Exactly.
it's the right thing to do."
Yeah. I mean, it
That
just,
kid.
yeah. Yeah, I was mad at him the entire time. I'm
That
like, oh my
kid.
God. Like his own parents. I mean, everything, like all this
Yeah.
weird stuff. And it was like, yeah, the level of people that turned on their
Mhm.
immediate family
Right?
members, I was like, holy
And who was it?
crap.
The old lady that was at Mike's mom or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah. She's, like, trying to have an affair with a young alien or whatever because
Mm-hmm.
he's promising her all kinds of stuff, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, I'll do whatever you say," and
Pulls the
whatever.
gun on her son.
Right?
Like, yeah.
The original miniseries was viewed in more than 33 million homes, which is about 40% of the American population who owned TVs at the time.
Wow.
In comparison, the current most popular series, Yellowstone, averages 13 million viewers per episode.
Huh.
But in 1983, you didn't have the oversaturation of media that you
That's
have
true.
today.
That's
So,
true.
you had choices, just a few choices.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
Mm.
The people who become like the resistance, the ones who are the scientists and the people who are trying to like they have figured this out. So that like you said, they're gathering equipment. They've kind of created a compound. It was kind of funny that there was the guy, he's like the gardener and he's a Hispanic guy
Mhm.
and he's sneaking a family out in his tree truck. And he says he has experience doing this. I was like, oh geez.
Okay.
But a lady sick sees him and she's like, then she calls it in
Of
and reports him for
course.
smuggling. And there were guys who were at the checkpoint and the guy in the back by the trees, he was like, oh, it's trees. Well, he heard somebody cough. He heard the little girl like cough. And the guy out front was like, anything? And he goes, nope, all good back here. So he wasn't going to turn them in either. And now we start to find out there's like sympathizers on the alien side.
Yes.
And they are like, we don't like what's happening. So we're going to do something about it.
Mhm.
And Martin, our good friend Martin, he turns into like one of my faves because he's
Martin's a
like,
little cutie.
he is a little cutie.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God, I love him. And he kind of befriends Mike, especially. And he's like, helps him escape and does all this stuff. And he gives him intel and they know, well, this is what we do. So do this instead. Here's your take my uniform. You can get out this way. So it's great that they like become part of that too.
Mhm.
And then people on Earth are starting to uh, rebel. So they're, getting more parts of like the resistance. I wrote in my notes, Jordan Lee is at the med center and he yells at a reporter lady and then he gets kidnapped.
So you mentioned that you watched the 5 episodes.
Yes.
And that got really confusing
Yeah.
because there were 3 episodes of the miniseries.
Okay.
And that's the miniseries. And then there were 2 episodes called The Final Battle. And The Final Battle actually came out in 1984. So the original the original series was in 1983, and then The Final Battle was in 1984. Kenneth Johnson did not direct The Final Battle. So that's why it feels like there's a disconnect, because you and I were texting back and forth and you were confused because you were like, I
Mhm.
feel like I missed something
Yeah.
at the beginning of The Final Battle.
Yeah.
The studio didn't agree with the direction that he wanted to take the story, and he didn't like how they wanted to like turn it into a soap opera. So also they thought he was spending too much money. So they like got rid of him,
Oh.
and he absolutely hated the finished product of The Final Battle. He thought it was stupid because it wasn't what he would have done with it. And
Hmm.
he did still get writing credits under the name Lillian Weezer.
Oh.
I don't know why.
Huh. Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why. And in 2006, he completed a script for a new V miniseries called V: The Second Generation. That was in 2006, which takes place 20 years after the original series and ignores the final battle completely
Oh.
because, screw those guys.
Yeah.
But it was never picked up by a network. Instead, ABC aired their own reboot of the series in 2009, which I did watch.
Oh.
And it was, kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
It lasted 2 seasons. And Kenneth Johnson then adapted his screenplay into a novel, which he published in 2008. So
Hmm.
the final battle did get a little more cheesy. That's when
Oh, okay.
Robin had befriended a alien boy,
Mhm.
and they did the nasty on the spaceship
Yes.
with Diana watching, because apparently it was a whole elaborate
Scheme.
scheme,
Yes.
and Robin got pregnant by the
Yes.
alien babies.
Robin gets pregnant, and that's also what's weird is like when you start to realize she's pregnant, and then the whole time during her pregnancy, she slowly starts to get her collar around her neck
Yeah, it's
starts to
green.
turn green. I have to try to think of what his name is. It William? Is that the other guy? He's an alien. But in the very beginning, he like his English is messed up because they told him he was gonna go to a different country.
Oh,
So he
Willie?
Willie, is that his name?
Played by Robert
By
Englund?
Freddy Krueger, yes.
Yes, Freddy
Okay.
Krueger is,
So
yes, Willie.
instantly in the very first episode, I was like, well, that's Freddy Krueger. Because I will always know who Robert
Right, right.
Englund is
Oh,
because he's
everyone
Freddy
knows who
Krueger.
Robert Englund is.
So love him.
Mhm.
Love him. And
Yeah,
he
Willie was a sweet guy.
yeah. So he knew right away what was up with Robin because he's like, that's what happens when our women are with
Mhm.
child. They start
Mhm.
whatever things happen or whatever. So he was kind of like the guy that could kind of be there to alien splain, I guess. Like I was kind of like, what's he doing? And him and that other lady are like in love. Like they're so cute too. I
So
was like,
cute.
man, some of this stuff needs to actually like happen where it turns out good. So yeah, Robin ends up having you already described how she has a regular baby and an alien baby. And she was nervous the whole time, like, what's my baby
Sure.
gonna be like? And they had no and so then first of all, they're trying to do like a C-section in a tunnel where they're all hiding. There's a couple doctors.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, there's one normal baby and then one alien baby.
Other baby just comes crawling out of there. He was a complete surprise, and
It
he's an
and
alien.
he's an alien, he did his own thing, and I'm like, "Oh my god." And then the next thing you know, the regular baby is shedding skin and ages like up to
Seriously.
6 years old within a couple days.
And she has magic powers.
Yeah, she has magic
Why does
powers.
she have magic powers? Do the aliens have magic powers?
Well, apparently only if you mix them together with the humans.
Well, maybe that was the experiment that
Yeah.
Diana wanted.
And the alien baby, then you kind of feel bad because the alien baby shrivels up and dies
Yeah.
because it got a bacteria. But that's how they figured out how they were going to save their planet by giving the bacteria to the aliens,
Mhm.
which ends up being a good thing. But then, yeah, he turned into kind of a cute little shriveled up dead baby. And he was like, and then it was sad that he died.
Well,
Well, and they kidnapped the baby daddy. They kidnapped the alien baby daddy, Brian, to test the bacteria. 'Cause Robin's so mad at him
Yeah.
that she like, that all
Like,
this happened,
he
and,
knocked me up, I'm gonna poison him to death.
yeah, but at the same time, when they're kidnapping the baby daddy, they also kidnapped, what's the kid, the young Nazi? I keep forgetting his name.
Daniel.
Daniel. He got set up, and then the visitors take him off, and they're gonna
Okay.
kill him because 'cause they're like, "Well, you turned on us," and
I
he's like,
know.
"That didn't happen," and I was like, "Well, kinda good,"
I
'cause
mean,
he
that
killed
was
the
gonna
old lady one time. Ruby, the old lady
yeah,
he killed.
that was gonna happen. You can't hook up with the bad guys. You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
They're gonna turn on you. Oh
and it
my
happens
god.
a lot in the end, yeah,
It
lots of
always
lot
happens.
everything everybody gets turned on.
So in the end of the final battle, spoiler,
Yeah.
um, the visitors arm a weapon to blow up the planet.
Yeah, apparently if they destroy the mothership or something, it's basically like a nuclear attack, and
Yeah,
it will destroy the entire Earth.
sure.
Yeah,
But then the little girl, Elizabeth, her
yeah,
name is Elizabeth,
yeah.
she is magic and she stops it. And let me tell you, okay, folks, we only watched the miniseries and the final battle. We did not watch the TV series, which came later,
Oh, I didn't even know about this.
which has been it was a weekly series that aired from October 84 to March 1985. I watched it sporadically at the time. It's been described as Dynasty with aliens. Like, seriously, their shoulder pads and hair got bigger,
Oh, Lord.
and there was a lot of, like a lot more sexiness,
Okay.
and the little girl Elizabeth is now, like, in charge of everybody, but she's also magic, and she's really cranky and mean. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Kenneth Johnson also was not involved at all with that series because
I
it
can
was
imagine.
yeah, it's weird. I mean, you can watch it if you want to, but
Yeah,
I
it
haven't
was
been able to find it, so
yeah. I do like at the end when they've discovered this poison that they're gonna use on all the aliens. So it's like a red powder, and then they start shooting it out everywhere, and they launch hot air balloons to try to like disperse it everywhere. And they create a pill for the aliens that they like to be immune to it. And they've
nice.
discovered it doesn't affect humans, which is nice, of course. Um, and then they secretly, like they said they're gonna do it through air bases. But they found out, well, Mike's son, who had been frozen, and then
I totally forgot about his
they
son.
got him back because actually the grandma wanted him back, but then Mike gets him back, he gets kidnapped again, all that fun stuff. He got brainwashed because he starts to act weird, and he talks about traitors and different things, and they're like, "Rrr."
Mm,
And he runs off and tells grandma, "Hey, here's what their plan is." So she tells the guy that's important, and but it backfires because they started spreading it with hot air balloons. They didn't do the air bases because they distracted them. And then the rest of them get onto the mothership and start throwing it in the vents, and it kills them. It kills the aliens instantly, which is great. It was like this whole thing, and Diana ends up being the last one. She starts killing people off. She kills off the main guy, who's like the leader of their planet. And it's like this whole crazy mess. And then she decides she steals his key from him. It's her key and his key, I guess, that can create the nuclear disaster.
mhm.
But yeah, that's when the little girl who doesn't speak at all, then all of a sudden just has
Yeah.
magical powers and
Then
she
she's
stops
magic.
it. Yeah. And there's like underlying stories, Mike and Julie being like basically in love at this
Oh,
point.
we
And
all saw that.
yeah, I mean, there's so much. I mean, the crazy part is the amount of ways how that Mike doesn't get killed because of how much crap and I mean the times when they're all sneaking around okay, we have to do this, then we have exactly 12 minutes to get out, otherwise we literally disintegrate in that little tunnel thing. And I mean, just like what? And they all, I mean, it's just like the whole group that comes together, and then all the somehow, yeah, it's just, but it really kept me always interested in what was
Mhm.
happening next. And there's cheesy parts, but oh my God, it was so good. I was like, this is really, really good.
It's fun, and I now am realizing that brainwashing, is a thing that I learned about from this show when I was in the 3rd freaking grade. I was like, "Oh my gosh, am I gonna be brainwashed?" Like, all you have to do is, like, put somebody in front of a TV maybe? I don't know,
Yeah.
and, like, then they're
And
brainwashed.
then scare them that a monster's gonna
Yeah.
come after them. And then at the very end, Julie's holding a gun on Diana because
Mhm.
they're trying to save the planet. Diana's looking at her, and her voiceover is starting to talk. And she's like, Julie,
Oh, yeah.
stay where you are.
Yeah.
And she's not actually talking. And Julie starts shaking because the whole brainwashing is, she's like, the monster will come get you, Julie. And then she just like jumps out some hole and she escapes. So Like, that was also like a cliffhanger. Diana just escaped at the end and flew off in some little tiny ship.
Because she had to come back for the series.
Yeah. I was like, what? What? So yeah, that was crazy. I was like, and I wrote that at the end, except that Diana escaped.
She has to. It's just like how Darth Vader escaped at the end of A New Hope, but you don't know about that.
No.
You've never seen it.
Never seen it.
Well, let's just say some things about the cast.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them, so I'm just
There's
gonna hit the
so
ones
many.
that stood out to me. Okay, so and we'll be fast. Mark Singer plays Mike Donovan, the reporter. He was fresh off Beastmaster, which I guess every guy has seen. I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
No.
Okay, let me just hold on. Tangent.
He's also in an episode of Simon and Simon. I just want to say that. Okay.
He's also on Dallas. Hello.
Okay.
Mark Singer. Okay. When he was on Dallas, I was like, where do I know that guy from? Where do I know that guy from? Okay. Look him up.
Probably when I told you that we have to watch V was when he was on Dallas.
I think you probably did. Yeah. So I looked up his name, of course, because I like, again, where do I remember this guy? Oh, Beastmaster. I'm pretty sure watched it probably 400 times when I was a kid. Right in this very moment, I can't tell you a single thing that Beastmaster is about. But if I looked it up right now, or if I started watching it, I would remember every part of it. If Michelle was listening to this, she'd be screaming at me right now.
Michelle, call the number.
Call the number.
Leave a message.
We'll
put it on.
So when I saw him here too, I was like, Beastmaster. So I had to, I mean, that's who he is.
That's hilarious, because I watched
so guess what the next thing we're going to watch is Beastmaster.
I was watching this with my husband, and he immediately was like, oh my gosh, this is the Beastmaster. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No idea what you're talking about.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
I don't want to watch it. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see.
Okay. So Faye Grant was Julie Parrish, the very, very young scientist. In the beginning, she's like, I'm 23 and I'm a scientist. She played Taddie McKee in the 2001 series State of Grace. If you were wondering where you saw her face, State of Grace. I didn't watch it, but I knew of it.
Okay. Yeah, she's super familiar.
But she was cute. David Packer plays Daniel Bernstein. That's the guy we don't like.
Yeah.
His family hides the Maxwell family in their garage or whatever. And he's also joined the aliens. He turns against the Maxwells. He was 20 years old when V started, and it was his first starring role. And he later appears in movies like You Can't Hurry Love and RoboCop. And he's another one of those 80s faces that you just know.
Yep.
Like, you know, but you don't know why you know.
Exactly. I was like, this guy too. How do I know him? So yeah.
Then Blair Tefkin played Robin Maxwell. And she has had a very healthy singing and songwriting career since this. You can see some recent, like really recent stuff on YouTube of her, like just in her house playing piano. And she I think she was at Lilith Fair or something, but like she's had a musical career. She was not the original actor for the part.
I read that.
Okay. So we're going to get into it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay.
Dominique Dunn, who played the older sister in Poltergeist, was originally cast as Robin and filmed for several weeks. Did you read this whole story?
I did not. I kind of saw a little bit.
Okay, it's sad. On October 30th, 1982, she was at her home rehearsing with her co-star David Packer, who plays Daniel. This is why I can't totally hate Daniel, because the actor, this poor actor, he was only 20 years old. So they were at her house. I think in the testimony, he said that they had gone to breakfast together because they had gotten to be good friends, because they were rehearsing this scene where he has to like come on to her and tell her that he'll hide the family if she goes out with him or whatever. And then she has to like reject him or whatever. So they had breakfast. They went back to her house, and like her ex-boyfriend showed up or called or something. And he was like, who's that guy in your house? So she went outside to talk to him, and they fought, and he strangled her to death in the driveway. The filming of V was put on hold for 2 weeks after that. Oh my gosh. But yeah, he was there. He had to testify in court. It was awful.
Oh God.
And like people were not very nice to him on the set sometimes, because he was there and he didn't do anything about it, because they were outside and he was like, well, I heard some noises, but like I didn't really know what was going on. He was 20.
Right.
It was the early 80s. And he just was like staying out of her business.
Right.
And Yeah,
Like,
he
why
went
would you even be looking out there at that
right.
point? Like, you wouldn't think like, well, hey, that's on
That's what's
them, and
happening.
her and
Yeah,
I are just friends,
yeah.
so I'll let them be.
So he went outside. He found her, whatever he
Oh
called police.
man,
It was horrible.
that
So
is
they
horrible.
shut down filming for a couple weeks. Then they had to replace her with Blair Tefkin and reshoot her scenes and
Hmm.
whatever. Richard Lawson played Dr. Ben Taylor. He was one of the scientists.
Mhm.
He was also in Poltergeist. But he played Nick Kimball on Dynasty from 1986 to 1987 and Lucas Barnes on All My Children from 92 to 94. So I probably saw him on there when I was in the
Mhm.
student center in college.
Mhm.
And also, he was married to Beyonce's mom from 2015 until last year.
What?
Right?
I had
I
no
was like,
idea.
how did Beyonce get into this?
Wow.
So Richard Lawson, he was the doctor
Yeah.
who eventually gets killed.
Yeah.
And then his brother like takes over his,
That's right.
yeah.
Right.
There was the two brothers and their dad.
Yeah.
So his brother was played by Michael Wright. He played Eddie King Jr. in the 91 film The Five Heartbeats. And then their dad, Caleb, was played by the ever adorable Jason Bernard.
I love him.
He is so cute.
He is so cute.
What do you remember him
I
from?
mean, I can't think of a single thing besides ever. I mean, I'm like, what all have I seen him in?
He was Judge Willard on Night Court.
Of course, yes.
And he was Herman's boss on the series Herman's Head. Did you ever watch
Okay.
that?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh, I loved Herman's Head. It was very short lived because it was about like these characters who lived inside this guy's head. And
Oh, I did know the premise
he would
of
go
it.
to
Yeah.
work and
Yeah.
like this guy was his boss.
Okay.
But it was such a cute show and then it was
Yeah.
canceled and that was mad. Unfortunately he died of a stroke in 96, right after completing the film Liar Liar with Jim Carrey. But yeah,
Oh.
he was super cute. He seemed
Okay.
to always play a judge though.
I was just going to say, I feel like he's been on a judge on other things, possibly.
Yeah, there was a lot of tension between the brothers because Elias was like kind of a screw up and like,
Mm-hmm.
his brother was always like, I don't know why you just don't just like get a job and be like a normal person. And then he was like, I don't know why you got to be like a doctor and be all serious or whatever. But then he ends up taking over for his brother when he dies and helps with the resistance.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of crazy because early on I was like, when they killed him off right away, I was like, oh, then we won't see any more of like the you kind of always
Yeah.
wonder. And then they became huge part of that. And yeah, the brother was like there till the end, helping with everything.
Mm-hmm. Daniel's mom, Lynn Bernstein, was played by Bonnie Bartlett. I just started watching Little House on the Prairie. I didn't tell you that.
I was just thinking that we should watch that.
Oh
so
my
good thing you said
goodness.
that.
Okay, it's so good. She played the widow Snyder, and I was watching Little House on the Prairie. Like I said, I watched V like a couple months ago, but I'm watching Little House on the Prairie, and I was like, why is this lady so familiar? Why is she so familiar? It's totally her. Not only is she the lady in V,
Yeah.
but she's 95 years old, still alive. She's married to actor William Daniels, who played Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World and Girl Meets World. And he also was the voice of Kit in The Knight Rider. They starred together in Saint Elsewhere, which I also started watching several years ago.
Oh.
And on June 30th, 2024, they had their 73rd anniversary, making theirs the longest marriage in Hollywood history.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
That is crazy.
He's like 97 and she's 94. But that's who that lady is.
She's in a lot of stuff
She's
too.
in so much
So
stuff.
yeah, I knew it was Little House, and then when I saw her, I'm like, oh, she's a popular actress. And then I was kind of like, what? Again, some people, if I didn't directly look them up to be like, okay, what are all the things? But I'm always like, I know this person from a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's totally cute.
Yeah.
The sinister Diana was played by Jane Badler, and she was Miss New Hampshire in 1973. And right after V, she was a regular on Falcon Crest.
I must remember her a little bit from Falcon Crest because the whole time I was like, she's familiar. And I looked her up a little and nothing seemed familiar. But I watched Falcon Crest when I was a kid and don't really remember any of it. But I feel like, is that why I know her?
She's very much the 80s looking lady.
She definitely is, yeah.
That was the look of the
And
80s.
kind of like the angry, I mean, she looks like she could be on Dallas, of course. So
Mhm.
of course she's on Falcon Crest. Like, yeah, she definitely is.
Mhm.
And we do have to mention too how they sometimes would play like the sexy music from the 80s on this show, like when
Yeah.
Mike and Julie would kiss or
Right.
whatever. It's that same Dallas music. It's that sexy music when
Now you
something
know
sexy is
something
gonna
sexy is
happen.
happening. Joanna Kerns pops in.
I know. She's in very briefly.
Because the reason so she was Mike's ex-wife,
Yeah.
Marjorie. And if you think in 1983 that you were watching this show and you were like, "Oh my goodness, it's Maggie Seaver,"
Mm-hmm.
you weren't
She
because
wasn't Maggie
she
Seaver
wasn't
yet.
Maggie Seaver yet.
I know.
She'd not starred in a TV series at all yet. Growing Pains aired 2 years later.
Hmm.
She had been on the A-Team and Three's Company and Magnum PI in the same year in 1983. But we didn't know who she was.
No, sure didn't.
So I'm like, wow, they sure are wasting a whole star on this little spot, like this little character that's just the mom of his kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaking Joanna Kerns.
Exactly. And you were like, oh, wait.
Oh, wait, we don't know
Star
her yet.
yet.
That was fun. And Richard Hurd played John. That's the guy who's like the head alien,
guy.
who's
Yeah.
very unassuming looking.
Yes.
He's just like, I know what my alien costume is going to be for the humans. It's just going to be an average old dad looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the spokesperson.
Yeah.
He does all their PR, and he's very recognizable. He's been on like MASH and The Golden Girls and Quantum Leap and Simon and Slayman and Seinfeld. He was on Dallas, and he was Captain Dennis Sheridan on TJ Hooker, and he passed away in 2020. He was 87.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that guy was like, he had kind of like a smiley face. Like, hey, you guys, we're just here.
You can trust me.
You can totally trust me. Look, I look like your grandpa.
Exactly.
It's
You
fine.
totally look
I'm
like
not
your
a
grandpa.
scary looking alien.
Exactly.
Andrew Prine was Steven, an alien. And in 1963, he was a suspect in the murder of a woman he'd been dating who'd been stalking him.
Oh.
But he was cleared.
Okay.
So he was the alien who's friends with the old lady.
Yeah. And he is in
He's in so many
other things. And I'm pretty sure, I feel like as soon as I saw him, I'm thinking we saw him on Columbo. I'm like,
probably.
I feel like he was a bad guy on Columbo.
He's
like,
another character actor that's in everything as
Yeah.
a bad guy.
Yeah. And he's got the look to be. So interesting.
He does have that look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but you got cleared, you said?
He-
Like, did
He was cleared. He was
Okay.
cleared. I mean,
Okay.
so like he'd been dating this woman, and she like, I don't know all the details, but he'd been dating this woman. They broke up, and then she was like stalking him, and then somebody went into her apartment and killed her, and he was suspected, and then it turned out that it was like an upstairs neighbor or something. I don't know. Martin was played by Frank Ashmore, the alien who wanted to help the humans.
Love
And I
Martin.
just said, total cutie.
Yeah.
He also played Victor in Airplane.
Yes.
That's who it
I
is.
did look it up because I was like, how do I know Martin?
So that's how he can fly the spaceship.
Of course.
Because he's a pilot.
Because he was a pilot on Airplane.
What's your Victor, Victor?
Star Clarence. He's in, again, same thing. But I looked it up and nothing and I was like, no. Because he reminds me of another actor, and yet I don't know who it is. I don't know who the actor is he reminds me of also. Because there's a specific way he looks with his eye. And I'm thinking that is part of something that I'm thinking of. And so
Don't you hate that? Like
I'm gonna
those
figure it
thoughts
out.
that are in the back of your brain,
Yes.
but you can't reach them.
Yes.
It's just there.
Yes.
He's one of those guys. Yeah, but Martin was a very nice alien.
Yeah, I loved him.
And then Robert Englund plays the bumbling cutie Willie.
Yes.
As we said. And this was a year before he became known as Freddy Krueger.
Wow.
Which is funny because even when he was Freddy Krueger, we didn't really know he was Freddy Krueger because Freddy Krueger always had his makeup on. So like, unless he was like doing an interview or something, you weren't like, oh, that's Freddy Krueger.
He was always on TV, and I have a funny story about that. I was watching some late night show I still lived at home. I was a kid. And they would bring people on, and you had to try to, they'd ask members of the audience if they knew what this person did for a living. And they'd pick out who they said.
What's my line?
Well, and it was like they'd pick out some other person they said was random.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching it at one point, and Robert Englund was there. And he stands up, and this old lady was like, "You look like you're a school teacher." And people knew, I guess some people like I can't remember the premise of the show, and I remember seeing it. I knew who it was right away. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's Freddy Krueger." Watching him in this, he's the cutest
He's not Freddy
and
Krueger.
unassuming, and he saves lives.
He's kind of like a
And
golden retriever.
he really
Yeah.
is.
He's just
And
lovable
that's
and
the
just
guy
makes
that
me happy.
becomes literally the reason I can't watch scary movies anymore. I mean, man, Nightmare on Elm Street messed me up, but yeah, he's
But
Freddy
you couldn't
Krueger.
in the 80s, you couldn't just Google who plays Freddy Krueger and see the face of the guy who plays Freddy
Right.
Krueger. So I didn't know what Freddy Krueger looked like in real life until much, 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 much later
Yeah.
without his makeup.
Yeah. I don't know how I knew it. Yeah, like there must have been times I must have seen a lot of things that
I
he was
wasn't
on.
I wasn't allowed to watch Nightmare on Elm
Unmakeup.
Street.
Oh, we watched it, unfortunately.
I still don't want to. His romantic interest was Harmony. And she was played by
Harmony, yes.
Diane Carey. And she was also in The Bionic Woman. And she was on an episode of Alf. I don't
Interesting.
remember. But yeah, she was also a cutie. She was like a waitress.
Mm-hmm.
And she and Willie had a little thing going on.
Yeah.
And there was a point where she thought he had died or whatever because like the plant exploded or something. And like, yeah, it was a whole thing.
Well, and in the beginning, when they realized, oh, here's what the aliens are, she kind of didn't believe it also. And then somebody scratched his hand and revealed his skin. And then, but he was so unassuming. And then at one point, they literally had him like chained up or something too. And I was like, oh my God. And then towards the end, they realized he was helping them. And then those two were great. And then, because then she ends up dying, I think. Harmony gets shot when they're on the ship
Did she die,
trying
though?
to. Okay, well, here's the first thing. How do all of them? They get shot, but nothing actually happens. Like by those like laser things, and people fall down.
It's like stormtroopers. Like they get hit and then they
Yeah.
just are done.
Although I think that I think so. I think she does end up dying
don't-
because she gets shot, and then she's like, "No, you need to get out of here. You need to save yourself." And he didn't want to leave her. And then they don't show anymore about that because that was literally at the very end. I was like, oh man, oh man.
Well, then we have Michael Ironside, who played Ham Tyler in the final battle, and he's the angry-looking guy who looks like he's like every mean tough guy, gangster dude in every show ever, and you don't want to be around him because he has a very yelly face. He scares me. I don't know what kind of person he is in real life.
Yeah.
He could be a very nice person or he could not be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he has a very, very terrifying face.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh, I don't want to cross this guy.
Yeah. He scares me. Also in the final battle is Thomas Hill, who plays Father Andrew Doyle. So like the resistance, they have like the priest there, and he is there at the birth of the babies.
And can I ask if you know the answer to this? Why does he kidnap the child and take her to the mothership?
I don't know.
Do you think he knew she had magical powers?
I don't know. I don't know.
None of that made sense to me. He just kidnaps the child, doesn't tell Robin. And hi,
maybe
Diana,
he was like, look,
here's a hybrid child that we made.
We don't want the responsibility of your alien baby. Here's a baby. He probably has magical powers. I don't know.
So weird.
Let me tell you, the Thomas Hill played Jim on Newhart.
Yes.
Right? Remember?
Yes.
So he comes on the screen and I'm like, haha, this is going to be great. It's Jim. Jim is so funny. Nothing funny. Absolutely nothing funny about Father Andrew Doyle. Not one thing did he say that was funny. I was like, well, this is a bummer.
Yeah.
But also, this was before Newhart.
Yeah.
So.
True.
Yeah.
He's just a priest.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I couldn't figure out Father. I couldn't figure out. He was always so angry.
Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness and like same thing, like little plot weirdness. Yeah.
Oh, the alien baby died.
Yeah. Oh well.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Father.
Crazy.
Can you baptize an alien baby?
That's a good question. It's a good question indeed. Yeah. I wasn't expecting to love this. I will say too that yeah, I was telling a friend of mine, I'm like, you have to watch this. I'll give you my Amazon sign-in. She's like, oh, I didn't just say that. Yeah, Amazon's
They're
you're not
listening.
listening.
They're totally listening.
Um,
I think more people should watch this because I think
mhm.
it's very important. Like,
Yeah.
they're aliens, but it's an occupation of people, and it's like taking away people's freedoms and all that
Mhm.
stuff. And it is very poignant. And there are people who are like really bananas for this show still. And
Yeah.
as I said, cosplay as the visitors, which I think would be awesome if I walked into like a convention and there were visitors walking around. I would be
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness.
You'd be like, "Oh my gosh." Well, I can imagine, like, just because I mean, to me, it was very in the beginning, very Star Trek-y, like,
Hmm.
so and I know that that's a huge following, like, I
Hmm.
get that part of it, so I could see where that would be something that people would glom onto as
Hmm.
well.
I mean, I thought about
Yeah,
this show for years
yeah,
because you couldn't just pull up a show
and like
in
we
the
talked about
80s.
earlier,
Yeah.
North and South is that way for me. We've
Yeah.
talked about North and South. I I can't believe people haven't seen that, and I,
Hmm.
like, literally am like, "You need to watch it." People, "Well, why would I?" I'm like, "You don't that doesn't sound amazing to you? Like, does it?" So, to me, it's like, this is the kinda thing I would have never had no idea what it was. You
Hmm.
told me about it. I'm
Hmm.
like, "Alright," and I'm so glad I watched it. Like, I would most definitely watch this again just to
Hmm.
be because it's yeah,
Well, I had high hopes for the reboot in 2009,
yeah,
and I watched it. I didn't watch all of it. I watched like maybe the first half of the first season, and I
yeah.
just like it was dumb, and
Mhm.
so I just stopped.
That's too bad.
Like they weren't doing it justice. There was supposed to be like a line of toys because, of course, all things have to have toys,
Yes.
and so there was supposed to be a line of toys, and they even showed at one point a kid. I don't know if it was Mike's kid or there was a kid playing with a spaceship and some
Mm.
alien toys,
Oh.
or maybe it was in the series later.
Oh.
It might have been in the TV series, but
Yeah, there's not too many yeah, I was gonna say
yeah,
there's
there
not too
is
many
one
kids.
point where there's like kids playing with action figures of the aliens and their spaceships, like
Oh,
of the visitors and their
yeah.
spaceships, because they're like, oh, this is the new fun toy is toys about the
Oh,
visitors. But
that is
and
a
so
good
there was
point.
supposed to be a line of toys, and then they ended up scrapping it or whatever. But
That does remind me, though, that when the little girl, when she hadn't quite aged to the age she saves the world, and she's, like, toddlerish,
mhm.
that she, like, attacks another little girl in the
Yes,
compound
she was
and
so creepy.
yeah, and steals the toy, and then it's very, like and that's
Mhm.
when Robin's dad comes in and they're like and he's like, some like, he basically wanted someone to kill the little girl, and they're like, "That's your granddaughter."
Okay,
And
but you
I'm
can't
like,
leave her alone with other children.
"Right," they were okay, so you know what? That's actually when the priest kidnapped her.
Okay, that's why it was because she was
Okay. I just put
dangerous.
that together.
That's I forgot about that whole
Yeah.
thing with her, like, sitting on that bed or whatever, the
Mhm.
cot with the
Yep.
other kid, and
And
I was
she's
like, "Oh my
just stares at
god."
you like all
That stressed me out.
yeah.
Maybe that's why I blocked it out because it stressed me so much.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you're right. That's crazy.
Murderous
Yep,
little
from
toddler.
yeah, she was, and then she saved the world. Crazy.
But then she goes I'm telling you, in the series, she does, like, the opposite. She
That's very
becomes,
weird.
like, evil,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. I don't know.
Crazy.
They had to give it drama,
Yeah.
they had to make it, like, all soap opera-y or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe someday we'll find out and we'll watch it.
most definitely.
I'm glad you liked it.
I did.
I
I did,
really
I did.
I really was I even told my husband, she's gonna be mad at me once they start taking off their skin, taking out their eyeballs. She's gonna be mad.
No. No,
Okay.
it was good.
Okay, good. I know you're not a big sci-fi fan, and
I'm
I'm not
not, but I
huge
was
on sci-fi
invested.
either.
There was way more to the story,
Yeah.
and when they throw in some people who are like, somebody you wanna root for, and I'm sort like, apparently I start to think of, like, people who are now my age being hotter when they were in the '80s, like Mark Singer. So, like, yeah, you start to get invested in people, and I was like, "Okay, this is good," and you're
Uh-huh.
right, even because 'cause you're right, the pew pew scenes kinda got to where I'm
Mhm.
like, "This is I don't like this."
Yeah.
Like, "Okay, they're dead.
Yeah.
Okay, you killed them. Alright, done. Why are we
Yeah.
shooting at each other for, 5 minutes?" Like, "Meh."
You have to have action.
Yeah,
You have to fill it up.
but I'm glad, yeah, that there was more to it because that made it good.
Okay.
Yay!
That concludes our episode on V, the miniseries, and V, the final battle. And if you haven't watched it, you totally should. We just spoiled everything for you. So sorry about that. but you'll forget. We
Yeah,
do, right? When we go
exactly.
watch stuff, we
Yeah,
totally forget.
yeah.
So find us on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a lot on TikTok. Find us on patreon.com and look in the show notes for our phone number so you can call us and leave a message, and we'll play it on the show and we'll talk about you
Yeah,
and whatever you want to say. Ask us a question. I don't care.
do
Tell us
all
you
the
hate us.
things.
I don't
Yeah.
care. Oh, and leave us a review. If you want to say you hate us, leave us a review. If you want to say
Mm,
you love us, leave us a
a
review.
review.
We love that.
We like that a lot.
We like that. Okay. That wraps it up.
Wrapping it up.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.